This is Classical Ideas with Greg Soden. Welcome to Classical Ideas. This is Greg Soden. So a while back, I came across an article in the Los Angeles Times called "A New Generation of LA Satanists Finds Community in Blasphemous Times," about a new generation of self-described Satanists. The article, featuring Alexandra and Zachary James of the doo-wop band Twin Temple, describes politics, feminism, and community as grounding values of the new generation. The article describes the long debates over what Satanism actually is. Two famous names might spring to mind: Aleister Crowley and Anton LaVey. Crowley is known for a more spiritual element, and LaVey is known for the atheistic Church of Satan. So today my guests are Alexandra and Zachary James of Twin Temple. The Jameses are not affiliated with a single strain of Satanism, like that of Crowley or LaVey, but we discuss some of the history, values, motivations, rituals, and more within modern-day Satanism. You can find them at twintemple.com. Enjoy.
Lucifer, my love. Lucifer, my love.
Welcome to Classical Ideas. I am here tonight with Alexandra and Zachary James of Twin Temple, and we are going to talk about Satanism. So thank you so much, both of you, for coming on Classical Ideas.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Greg.
I'm curious if you can just go ahead and start by introducing yourselves and talk about how you were introduced to Satanism as a practice.
Yeah, well, my name is Alexandra James.
My name is Zachary James.
And together we have a group. It's a Satanic doo-wop band, and it's called Twin Temple. As far as how we got introduced to Satanism, I think we've always gravitated towards and had an interest in the occult, magic, witchcraft, and beyond that, kind of just outsider culture.
Yeah.
We met through punk rock. Our first bands were punk rock bands here in Los Angeles, and
freedom of self-expression.
Yeah, definitely. I think all of those ideologies kind of encompass an idea of like individualism and freedom of self-expression and an exaltation of the individual self. So we've kind of always sought out those kind of modes of expression and existence that allow us to exist outside of and maybe even in opposition to the status quo.
Yeah. I feel like you can trace the lineage of the devil, in American music, from Robert Johnson to black metal, death metal. Definitely.
And I come from a punk rock background myself, as you may be able to see. I got my Lagwagon t-shirt on here tonight. That's really great. So I want to dive into some of the practices and beliefs of Satanism, just some of the basics, because what I try to do on the show is introduce people to the ideas that drive different philosophies and practices and ideas in the world. So can you tell me a little bit about the basic beliefs of Satanism, just a little bit of introductory level stuff?
Right. I think at its core, Satanism historically was actually a Christian invention. Satan is a character from Christian mythology, which is seen as basically this dualistic opposite to God. So if God is the embodiment of all things that are good, Satan is the embodiment of all things that are evil. And basically this construct was basically used as a way of systematically othering, oppressing, and even, murdering groups who existed outside of this Christian status quo. So, you saw that from everything from, the Middle Ages for people who are considered heretics. They must have been in leagues with the devil, to the Salem witch trials. Women were being accused of, selling their souls to the devil. So, really, you didn't have Satanism as a kind of organized religion. I think most people can agree, although there's precedence, until the founding of the Church of Satan and Anton LaVey in 1966. So the basic idea with that is essentially recontextualizing the idea of Satan as the adversary and actually donning that. So using it as a method for self-empowerment, for self-transformation, and basically saying, yes, I celebrate the adversary. I stand outside of the status quo.
And embrace duality, understanding that there is something beyond duality.
Yeah, and trying to transcend, this kind of dualistic thinking, that let's break down the idea that there is a good God and there is an evil Satan, and there is one way of existing. It's really about celebrating the individual and celebrating the humanities and understanding that we're all different, but we are equal. But from there, it's, definitely grown. And I think one of the most interesting thing about Satanism is it is a paradox, right? Because atheistic Satanism is sort of using Satan as a symbol, as an archetype, to express your belief in individualism, nonconformity, equality. But there are also theistic Satanists who, and it's kind of common within like ceremonial magic and magical practices, who believe that Satan is they ascribe Satan to basically the animating force of the universe, and they believe that, it can be communed with, manipulated for magic, manifestation, etc. So it's kind of interesting because we're just talking about this. Satanism in and of itself transcends a lot of those dualistic norms, because it's like, what other religion is there that's both atheistic and theistic? You don't have a version of like atheistic religions a lot of the times. So, and theistic at the same time. So, I would say that's our basic.
That's a primer.
Basic primer. With Satanism, there are like precedents within other traditions.
It's a complex. It's ancient. It's rooted in the past.
So, what is your? So now what I want to do is I kind of want to tease that apart a little bit. So, I noticed in the article that I read about you guys in the LA Times that I found that you don't necessarily fall within under a particular umbrella. So speaking for yourselves, I'm curious, is there like a deity aspect to it, or would you call yourselves atheistic, or are you part of the theistic side?
Paradoxically, I think we're both.
We're both. We're atheistically, philosophically. I feel like it's atheistic philosophy.
Yeah, I think we definitely use Satan as an atheistic symbol. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But then we also are practitioners of magic. And we definitely, practice sigil magic and other forms of magic. So that's something that you don't see, for example, with like the Satanic Temple. They're all about rational atheistic Satanism, and they don't actually have a magical practice that I'm aware of. Yeah. So we kind of straddle both, because funnily enough, in the history of magic, like Wicca, Gardnerian magic, Alexandrian magic, they were really afraid of being pegged with this devil worshiper title. They're like, oh, no, we're, pagan, and Wiccan and we're practicing magic, but we have nothing to do with the devil. And we're sort of like, what, difference does it make? Like, we're sort of like, yeah, we'll use it as a symbol. We'll use it as a spiritual philosophy. Yeah. We'll use it for whatever means we want. And they probably both, negate each other. But that's sort of what we love about, Satanism in the first place. So.
So you mentioned a term, I've heard it a couple times. There's like devil worshiping versus Satanism, and these are not exactly the same thing. So I'm curious if you can maybe tease that apart and explain what the difference between those two terms may be.
Right.
I don't think anyone is really devil worshiping, like many people at all. I mean,
Satanism I think devil worshiping.
You could say it's devil worshiping. It's worship of the self, and it's deifying the self, and in that case, we are embodying the devil. So there is that aspect of it.
But really, there in Satanism, there's no specific worship of this evil, man underground.
Right.
External force.
Got a pitchfork and horns and red face paint. Just as we believe there isn't a guy in the sky with a beard who's a man whose son is the heir to his holy belief system and they both wear sandals. Devil worshiping, I think, has typically, kind of like as we went over before, was this term to other anybody that basically within the Judeo-Christian tradition they didn't agree with, that didn't conform, or they needed an excuse to oppress them. Whether it was Native Americans practicing their indigenous traditions or women who are branded as witches. They are devil worshippers. Basically anyone.
Punk rock, they're all Satanists. They don't even know it,
I know there's a big trend within punk rock of underground Satanism as well. I grew up listening to like Alkaline Trio, and I know that the singer of Alkaline Trio is a really famous member as well.
Right.
Yeah, Matt Skiba, right?
Yeah.
So in your view, so I'm curious if you can each talk a little bit about this. What is the purpose or goal of Satanism to you? Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, as we mentioned, I think Satanism really celebrates the individual. And the beauty of it is that it really encourages you to seek experiential knowledge, to question things for yourself, and to not just accept dogmatic belief. So because of that, for everyone, Satanism really, it depends. It varies from individual to individual. I think for us, and within like our music.
Yeah, and our art and our life.
And our art and our life, our purpose is really to use it as kind of this way of creating a counterculture, an outsider community, challenging the status quo, upending dogmatic beliefs, and trying to change the society that we live in that's basically based on this dualistic inequality. We use it as a way to express our personal beliefs in, the individual, in inequality, in self-expression.
Yeah, and to shatter, false beliefs, false cultural beliefs.
Yeah.
How so, Zachary? That's such an interesting point.
I feel like just contemplating the ideas of duality, devil and God, and realizing that they're human made, and therefore there's something beyond that. And that for me really came to light while contemplating the devil, and the symbolism.
So is this a religion? Is it philosophy? So what is something that you think that how can you classify this sort of belief system? Does it need to be classified?
It's going to get classified, so we might as well.
Yeah. Ironically, I think it's both, and I think you can use it for either or. A lot of Satanists practice it solely as an atheistic
That's a philosophy. That's it. And to each their own,
which
it's
is
just subjective and individual.
Sort of the closest, philosophical like equivalent would be like rational humanism, essentially. But then there's also theistic Satanists who do practice it as a religion.
Yeah.
And I know that you have, like, on your website, you have sort of like a mission statement that says that as long as, like, do what you will as long as you don't bother other people or something like that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, we think Crowley said, do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. And I think that gets misinterpreted a lot to being, just do whatever you want. And I don't think that's what he intended that for, but we're kind of saying, do what thou wilt so long as it does not impede upon the will of others.
Okay, so now that we have a little bit of the philosophical grounding to stand on, what are some of like your daily habits or things that you do in your day-to-day life that are associated with this philosophy?
Philosophically.
Right. Well, our band is basically our major way of expressing that philosophy.
Yeah.
Within our music, and within our performances, we try to encourage equality, and tolerance, acceptance, love.
Yeah, using the platforms we have access to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would say, that's kind of our main vehicle for those beliefs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we're also practicing, magicians, and
there's daily magical practices, individual rituals to be done, just for centering and improving mental capacity and ability.
So what are some of the methods to get at that? So say you have like somebody who practices like Zen Buddhist Zazen every day where they would have like a daily sitting practice. So what might be like a daily practice that you might use for cultivation?
Yeah, well, it's actually really kind of basic occult stuff. But again, in Satanism, it's like you're using basic occult methods when you're talking about the magic. They're pulling from ritual magic and ceremonial magic. So a version of the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, is usually
that's a good daily practice for most magicians. Yeah,
we have a custom version that we do that's a little more hell bent and have some more hellish imagery than there's some angelic versions and whatnot. There's a lot of versions of it. So there's some daily rituals which you can either do physically as a moving meditation. There's visual aspects as well. Or you can do it all just as a sitting meditation in your mind, and it's a kind of etheric projection where you just envision yourself working, going through a set of motions that, correspond to certain symbols depending on what you're trying to achieve with the working.
So you can do it inside your mind, sitting completely motionless, like on the couch.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know that you do a lot of like ceremonial practices, like in the band as far as like performance art as well. I know that you perform like some invocations like in live music settings. So what are some of the significance of the invocations that you do on stage? Like if somebody were to see you, what is like the significance of what they are seeing in a performance?
Right. Well, the one that we've been doing a lot lately is this initiation or invocation to Lilith, which we use Lilith kind of as an archetype within our art, because we found that even with Satanism, you kind of still get some of this patriarchal symbolism. Like rather than God, the patriarch, you have, Satan, the patriarch. So we're kind of pulling Lilith as the same symbol, but with a feminine aspect. She originally was the first wife of Adam, and she wasn't made from his rib, but from the same dirt that Adam was made from. And so she truly was his equal in terms of raw material, and she knew that. And she didn't want to be subjugated by her husband at all, to the point where she didn't even feel that when they were having sex, she should be under him because she knew that she was just as powerful as him. So we're kind of drawing on that mythology within the ritual, where we are hoping to invoke that sort of understanding into the initiate. So it typically
involves... It's a political vehicle currently.
It is a political vehicle. Some of it is, we bathe them with the, metaphorical blood of Satan.
Yeah, we bind their hands, and then, after they've given their oaths and, kind of sworn to this way of thinking, and mode of thought, again, celebrating equality, individual expression, then the binds are, cut off and they're freed. So,
yeah,
it definitely, they're real rituals, they're in a heightened state, there's adrenaline pumping, there's a lot of people watching, they're saying the things out loud to themselves and being witnessed by a lot of people. I think we feel the energy, and it's very powerful on stage for sure.
Yeah. And they swear in front of a whole crowd, including some of their friends or, whoever, that they exalt, all humanity is equal. Mm-hmm. And, and then at the end we have a kind of fun, gory part where it's like if they break their vows, they'll have their tongues ripped and their flesh burned. And
yeah. So you mentioned a couple times, like you've mentioned equality, you've mentioned the strange time, you've mentioned sort of like a theme under, like a theme running through this of empowerment of women and equality among the sexes. What is something that you think Satanism offers our modern society? What is it something that it does particularly well?
It shakes society
it's
up.
Divisive.
It rattles the cages. I think whenever you're touching a taboo, you're gonna get people kind of up in arms about things, and honestly, we get a kick out of that because I think, art at its core should make people ask questions.
Yeah, like, these are the questions that need to be asked right now, in the current time we're in now.
Yeah.
So why do you think that it's important for people to be exposed to ideas like this that might shock them? Like, why is this a good thing, this being shocked sort of for a lot of parts of people in the world?
Because it makes you think.
Yeah, I think anytime you're having a visceral or emotional reaction to a concept, it sort of serves as like a hook, right? It will get you to pay attention. We live in such an information-saturated era. We're bombarded with ideas, symbols, Facebook updates, just nonstop, just information nonstop. And if you can find a way to cut through the noise and to grab people's attention, even just for a second, I think you can use that as a really powerful tool to just make people pay attention. And hopefully, there's more behind it when they start digging deeper. They're like, oh, it's not just about blood, drinking blood and a horned dude or, any of these kind of superficial ideas. They go, oh, there's something here where maybe I could get involved with imagining the future to be more equal, or maybe
evil is subjective and there's no real way to define it, and defining that is a very, very strange thing.
Right.
And it reminds me, this entire conversation almost reminds me as well of a quote by Aristotle, who said, "It is the mark of an educated mind to consider an idea without accepting it." So, like, being exposed to these ideas is not bad, and being exposed to outside ways of thinking and countercultural ideas, it doesn't harm you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes. Well, we don't even think you should listen to us or anybody. You can if you want, and if you like what you hear and it resonates, that's great. But I think what Satanism encourages and what we believe is that you should seek your own experiential knowledge of the world, that you should question things for yourself, and you should find a mode of existing that resonates with you. If that's Satanism, that's great. If it's Christianity, fine. You know, whatever it may be, you need to know for yourself. It's about finding it for yourself rather than being handed something and told this is the right way or the only way, or this is what you have to do, you know, to be a good person.
There really is no way, and that's the whole point. You have to find your own way, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It almost reminds me of like the freedom of thought guaranteed in the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights as well.
Absolutely.
It's like encouraging that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think freedom of thought, freedom of self-expression.
Yeah, question everything.
Yeah, and just finding out things for yourself.
So there's been a lot of names dropped during the conversation. I've heard Aleister Crowley, who is known as being a bit more spiritual in his practices, Anton LaVey, who's known for being a bit more atheistic in his practices. Who are some of your spiritual role models that that you read, that you study, that you find interesting, and why?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we read a lot of occult
We read a lot of occult
literature.
books.
It's pretty wide-ranging.
Yeah, which again, if you're talking about magic and the occult, you know,
Or
Satanism
Satanism.
isn't, you know, there's the boundaries expand, you know, so there's a lot of reading to be done. It depends on if you're talking about it philosophically or magically, I feel like.
Yeah.
Do you have maybe a couple suggestions that you could like name drop for people to look into, people who are curious to know more and would be inclined to do a little bit of reading?
Well, I mean, philosophically, you can't really get into the meat and potatoes of Satanism without reading LaVey.
Yeah,
I mean,
but he's LaVeyan Satanism, which is a specific strain. Honestly, what we're doing right now, specifically, has not been done and put into a book philosophically. Philosophically, it hasn't been used as like a satanic feminism, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say that if you had to sum it up, we're kind of...
It's satanic feminism.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's a really important point that I think was pointed out really well in that LA Times article that I read. Interesting. Okay. So what are a few common misconceptions about Satanism that you'd like to clarify for listeners?
Well, I think our favorite one is probably that we ritually
So we do
murder
kill babies.
Mm-hmm.
Drink their blood. I don't know where that came from because ironically, you can find direct reference to both baby and animal sacrifice in the Bible. When God directed Abraham to murder his firstborn son with a ritual knife. I mean, that's kind of like satanic, right?
Supposedly.
And then at the very end, last minute, apparently God changed his mind in this sadistic test of loyalty and had him murder an animal as sacrifice to him instead. Within all satanic texts, there is absolutely zero reference to baby or animal sacrifice, but there is a very clear depiction of that in the Bible. So I'm not really sure where that comes from, but it's kind of fun. We like to play with it on stage. We usually will drink blood from a chalice and you know,
baptize people in blood.
And
the initiates, the neophytes.
It's fun to play with blood. So
well, yeah,
you know.
obviously.
So we use blood. But I think another one is that Satanists like hate their parents or hate society or are really into harming people or you know, again, like with murdering babies thing. Like it's actually the opposite. I think, well, for us as Satanists, we're really interested in imagining a future where humanity is equal. And we can kind of unshackle ourselves from like the widespread oppression that's really afflicting our society today. So it's actually not that we hate our parents or hate society. It's actually that we want to see a more equal future,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's actually coming out of, I think, a deep love for the humanities and the individual and other people.
Yeah.
At least, for us. I don't know. Maybe there's an angsty teen listening to Slayer somewhere who like hates their parents and loves Satan. I don't know.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm trying to think about where I want to go now. So one of the things that's really stuck out to me lately is that Satanism, and especially with the work of Lucian Greaves, seems to have a really active role in the American political system for expressing the freedom of religion and First Amendment rights. What do you see as being some of the important things that the Satanic Temple and Satanism in general is doing to change the idea of religious liberty in the United States?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The statue they
erected, that was pretty cool, as well as
giant Baphomet. You spoke of if there was any deity, the symbolic deity would be Baphomet for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Satanic Temple is doing really great political work.
Yeah.
As far as advocating for the separation of church and state. And they're using a really smart little loophole by adopting Satanism as an actual religion to kind of needle the politicians. Like, I'm a little fuzzy on the exact details, but I remember there was someone who wanted to erect a giant thing of the 10 Commandments, like a massive sculpture within a government building.
Right. There's been a few of those. There's been one was supposed to be in Oklahoma, and then the statue of the 10 Commandments was vandalized, and then the Satanic Temple said that they were going to take their statue down so that theirs wasn't the only one, because then there wouldn't be the separation of religion and state. So they wanted there to be the one there. If the 10 Commandments was going to be there, then they wanted the Baphomet. But if the 10 Commandments wasn't going to be there, then there's no need for the Baphomet.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of the genius thing about pointing out the hypocrisy of, this idea that supposedly in America, church and state are separated, when clearly it's not. And a lot of the legislative agenda is actually operating under a Christian principle, such as, the pro-life ideas and anti-gay marriage and like these sorts of things are really a Christian agenda. And so they're going, well, if you can have your Christian agenda in a state building, well, then we can have our satanic agenda. And the funny thing is, a lot of times I think they're like, well, forget the 10 Commandments, just take away the Satan.
Right.
Handle it. So I think the great thing about what the Satanic Temple is doing is that they understand that protest should not be without art. And they have a flair for the theatrical that I admire. And,
they're doing good stuff.
I think they're doing really great work. I mean, we're not directly affiliated with them, but we certainly admire their agenda and their tactics, and, good on them.
For sure.
Yeah, I know that Lucian Greaves is extremely involved in the legal world, and he's got tons of lawyers, and he's really, really hyper vigilant about paying attention to these things. And living in Missouri, it's been impossible to miss what's been going on in Missouri recently with the case of Doe versus Greitens, where there was a Satanic Temple challenge of an abortion restriction being imposed. Yeah. So there's been a lot of activism and a lot of news and press around that. And the dialogue in this state in particular has been really fascinating to watch unfold. So there's been a lot of press, and a lot of major decisions have been made, and they won the case in the state of Missouri.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Hail Satan.
So, right. So let's dive into that statement there really quick. So a lot of ordinary people might be freaked out and unnerved by the statement, "Hail Satan." I'm not sure if either one of you are Mountain Goats fans. There's a band called the Mountain Goats, and the singer John Darnielle in that band is a Catholic, but he has this fantastic song called "The Best Death Metal Band Out of Denton." And he ends the song by chanting Hail Satan a whole bunch of times. So this is a practicing Catholic chanting Hail Satan at the end of one of his songs. So what is the significance of the phrase Hail Satan, and why do you think it freaks people out?
What were you going to say?
No, go ahead.
I mean, I almost see it as this subversive, transgressive punk rock namaste. Like,
not interesting. Okay.
It's almost like the spirit in me recognizes the spirit in you, but it's like way more badass.
More evil, yeah.
It's
like,
you know,
hail yourself, like hail everything. I feel like it also can be used in many ways.
I think it can be.
It has a lot of uses.
But it's a really fun way to kind of test the waters with people and just kind of, are you on the level or like, are you a squared? You know,
it's a test. How do you react to it? Does it make you scream, and like, why does it? What about your belief system makes you so
not
afraid?
Accept 2 words? What's the big deal? So I
That's
mean,
the whole point.
We kind of use it to just be like,
what's up, Hail Satan? It could be even a hi. It's to a fellow. Yeah.
Maybe like aloha.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like aloha.
So I know that you two are kind of adapting Satanism. So I know there's like sort of like an orthodox theology in some parts of Satanism. There are these groups called like traditionalists who who may have a certain view on things. And I know that you've called this like a feminist movement as well. So how is Satanism adapting in recent years? Like, where do you see it going in the future, especially in the United States, where we are?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean,
I think we're going to see a rise. I think people want to choose a side right now. It's kind of like, where do I stand during all this commotion that's currently going on? And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in the 60s, you had a different set of values that were being challenged. You had a certain socio-political climate that was being challenged, and there were certain reasons then. I mean, we're in a very different time now. Fast forward, 50 years or whatever. It's like, I think you see a lot more pushing back against some of the old guard and some of these patriarchal norms. And honestly, I mean, Satanism, witchcraft, magic, I think they've always been practices that are well suited to times of oppression, because it's all about community and self-empowerment and really looking within yourself to find that agent for self-transformation and change. So I think in that sense, I honestly think it's going to, I think more people are going to be interested in it. And, we've certainly seen a lot more interest just in the time we've had our band.
Yeah, that we've been publicly.
Since we've come out of the closet as Satanists.
How's your community doing? I know that you're really community oriented with the practice as well. So how's that going?
Yeah, it's great. It's growing. It's growing organically.
Yeah. I mean, it's been great. I think we've been connecting with a lot of like-minded individuals and, practicing magic with like-minded individuals and
expanding our practice and others.
Right.
Excellent. So this is a podcast that features voices from all religions and philosophies. So what do you hope that open-minded folks take away from this conversation?
Yeah. Well, I think for us, it's really that you shouldn't just accept dogmatic beliefs. That the beauty of humanity is that all of us are individuals, but that doesn't mean, we are not equal to one another. And basically, keep an open mind, question things, gain experiential knowledge for yourself, and just live your truth and don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's
yourself included.
Yeah.
So, Zachary, Alexandra, I am so grateful to you for your time this evening, for spending some time with me. Where can people find your work if they want to know more about what you're doing?
twintemple.com.
Yeah. We're on the internet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, both of you, so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you. We really enjoyed talking with you. So, hail Satan.
Hail Satan.
Lucifer, my love. Lucifer, my love. The candles are burning bright. Give me a little death. Take me as human sacrifice. I'm just a fool in love with you. I'd never sell my soul, but I give it freely to you. Oh, Satan, deliver me from society's hypocrisy. I'd kill, spend eternity with you. So tell me your preference, blue denim or a red dress, or should I risk arrest? I'm not ashamed of my nakedness. I'm not a saint, but I'm not a whore. I'm a woman. Oh, I've been screwed. I may not be a virgin, but I'm saving myself for you. I'm just a fool in love with you. I'd never sell my soul, but I give it free to you. Oh, Satan, deliver me from society's hypocrisy. I'll kill, spend eternity with you. I have the faith to leave, and I'm not afraid to bleed. 'Cause if I should fall to my knees, raise me up in holy Jesus. Dear Lucifer, my love, I'm writing you this letter 'cause church and state think that we just can't be together. Well, church and state just don't seem to know a thing, especially about the two of us. And anyway, baby, you're a much better kisser than Jesus. I'm just a fool, a fool in love with you. I'd never sell my soul, but I give it free to you. Oh, Satan, deliver me from society.
That was Lucifer, My Love, composed and written by Twin Temple off their debut album. You can find their work at twintemple.com. Other music on Classical Ideas is composed and performed by Derek Strybig. You can find his music at www.wearewarmmusic.com. If you like Classical Ideas, you can subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.